Have you ever lain awake at night, feeling the world finally fall quiet, only to notice the relentless noise within? You replay moments from your day, ruminating on words you wish you'd swallowed or ones you ache to have spoken. There's a familiar ache in your chest, a tightness that won't loosen, paired with the hush of thoughts you can't outrun. Did I say too much? Do they like me? Am I enough? Maybe you cloak these questions under layers of confidence or humor, wearing a well-practiced disguise of strength. But in private, perhaps even you feel the truth. Exhaustion, not from battles fought in the open, but from endlessly wrestling yourself into someone who can carry all this pain without ever letting it show. So, when do you get to put down the mask? When does this cycle of overthinking and self-doubt, of wanting to be fully seen while hiding away the parts you fear are unlovable, finally end? It's tempting to believe that peace will arrive with the next success, the next approval, or when you finally fix yourself. Yet you might begin to notice, as many have before you, that relief never truly comes that way. Something old persists. It lingers, unseen, beneath the surface of your most familiar emotions. You blink, and it's there again. The same fear, the ache for validation, the quiet sense of never quite belonging. This is a weariness deeper than physical tiredness. It's the unseen exhaustion of holding yourself together, not because the world expects it, but because some wounded part of you never learned another way. It's the cost of surviving with the belief that your pain must be hidden, managed, or overcome alone. But what if the roots of this struggle run far deeper than the immediate pressures of daily life? What if the pain you dodge is not behind you, but beside you every day, quietly steering your choices and coloring your world? Here is a truth both simple and unsettling. The pain we avoid doesn't dissolve, it dominates. Left unaddressed, it becomes an invisible hand, guiding our reactions and fueling our suffering far more than any external event. Think of the heartbreak of betrayal or the sting of rejection. At first, they seem singular, discrete events that disrupt the course of a happy life. But sit with these moments, really feel them, and you start to sense a deeper pattern, as if a wound much older and deeper is throbbing through this fresh cut. The event was only the trigger. The echo, the trembling in your spirit, is a chorus of old pain awakened anew. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who illuminated so many hidden corners of the psyche, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Isn't that what so often happens? We move through the world thinking we are acting out of free will, shaping our lives by choice, only to find ourselves looping through the same arguments, repeating the same mistakes, spinning stories of heartbreak and longing. We wonder, why does this keep happening to me? Maybe underneath, it is the unresolved anguish, fear of abandonment, the ache for approval, a need to prove your worth, that is steering the ship. We sabotage intimacy because connection feels dangerous. We shrink in silence rather than risk disappointment. We reach endlessly for validation, seeking a balm for wounds we don't remember receiving. If you pause for a moment to look back, can you spot the patterns? The moments you pulled away, even when you yearned to draw close. The times you hushed your voice, convinced it didn't matter, or tried to be perfect, believing it was the only way to be loved. We tell ourselves we have chosen this path, this guardedness, this striving. But what if it was chosen for us long ago? Most of us are not shaped by our radiant conscious hopes, but by the shadowy landscape of pain we never learned to name. The unseen aches from childhood linger, shaping the architecture of our adult lives, setting boundaries around the love we'll accept and the dreams we dare to pursue. Is it possible that the parts of you that feel small or afraid are simply echoes of an earlier life? Think back to when you were a child, just beginning to understand the world. Perhaps you remember moments, fleeting or enduring, when love grew conditional, praise came only with achievement, or your needs were quietly pushed aside. Maybe you learned that to survive, you must excel, or never complain, or simply become invisible for a while. Such lessons root themselves deep inside. Over time, they grow into the internal critic, the sense of isolation, the perfectionistic drive that whispers, "Do more, be better, only then will you be safe." How often do you recognize these patterns playing out, not as rational choices, but as survival strategies written in the language of pain? You grow up, but beneath every new interaction, the old wiring remains. The fear that if you truly revealed the whole of yourself, love would be withdrawn. The impulse to hide your messy, complicated feelings because long ago they proved too much for someone to hold. So you make yourself small or loud or armor up in competence. And yet, within all of these strategies, there is still a quiet, pulsating hope. Maybe this time, if I try hard enough, I'll finally be seen and accepted. So, where does this leave you now? How do you begin to break free from these silent architects of suffering? Maybe it starts simply with awareness, with a willingness to look gently at the wounds you carry, not as proof of defectiveness, but as the remnants of a younger self who did the best they could. What if, together, we could begin to unravel the threads of old pain, not with judgment, but with curiosity and compassion? What if the path to ending this exhausting cycle is not about becoming someone else, but about remembering yourself more fully, pain, vulnerability, and all? Let us walk into these questions, even as they unsettle us. For the truth is, the places we most fear to linger, our hidden hurts, our private shames, may hold exactly the wisdom we need. After all, it's only by turning towards what we've spent a lifetime avoiding that we have any hope of freeing ourselves from its unseen grip. If you are willing, perhaps the journey can begin here, not with answers, but with the courage to finally ask, what am I carrying, not from the world, but from within? And what might it feel like for the first time to set it down? Have you ever noticed how a familiar ache creeps into your life, lurking just beneath the surface of your daily routines? Maybe it shows up every time you stare at your phone, waiting for a message that never arrives. Or perhaps it's that restless feeling when yet another evening is devoured by scrolling through social feeds, chasing a connection that always slips through your fingers. Let's be honest, it's much easier to blame the world, other people, bad luck, fate, for our pain than it is to look inside. But what if we're haunted less by what the world has done to us, and more by the stories we've learned to tell about ourselves? The roots of our suffering aren't always immediately visible. They twist quietly beneath the floorboards of our consciousness, shaping the lives we build and the patterns we repeat. Maybe you've found yourself sabotaging a promising new relationship, even though you crave intimacy more than anything. You sense your heart quickening, a warmth building between you and someone you trust, only to suddenly push them away, pick an argument, or withdraw into silences you can't explain. Later, regret floods in, and you wonder, why do I keep doing this? Where does that voice come from? The one that whispers you're unlovable, or that closeness is inevitably a setup for betrayal? This is the cunning work of unconscious wounds. Most of us carry some version of the early conviction that in order to receive love or avoid pain, we must contort ourselves, make ourselves smaller, quieter, more agreeable, or endlessly productive. Perhaps as a child, your needs were too much for the adults around you. Maybe you were rewarded for being a good kid and punished, subtly or overtly, for inconvenient feelings or bold desires. Invisible contracts are signed, "I'll hide my anger so you'll accept me. I'll excel at everything to earn your approval. I won't burden you with my sadness." Over the years, these contracts become the scripts we follow, unconsciously shaping every interaction. Can you recognize their signature in your own life? So many of us grow up thinking we must be perfect to deserve belonging. We chase approval, yet every compliment sounds hollow and fades quickly, leaving us hungry for the next hit. You might become the friend everyone leans on, always available, always generous, until someday all that giving curdles into resentment. Why does no one check in on me? Why do I always give more than I get? It hurts, doesn't it, to realize that you have participated in your own depletion, that somewhere along the line you learned that your worth depended on being useful or agreeable. We search for solutions in all the wrong places. We buy books on charisma. We monitor our appearance. We check and recheck our standing in the eyes of others. We might even find successful performance, attracting many friends, earning promotions, securing the praise we are told to seek. Yet each new wave of achievement rolls away, leaving us stranded with the same old ache. So many believe if they can just get a little more approval, if they are just a bit funnier, sexier, kinder, or smarter, then finally they will relax into the security of belonging. But it never works for long. The emptiness reclaims the center stage, magnified by the exhaustion of perpetual striving. Maybe your deepest wounds are reopened not by strangers, but by the people you love most. A partner's criticism, the anxious silence of a friend, a fleeting moment where you feel left behind. These become powerful confirmation of core beliefs you may have internalized. I am too much or not enough. I am unworthy unless I am perfect. The sting is sharper because it echoes the first lessons of love and acceptance you learned, often from those entrusted with your care. Our most intimate pain is a mirror, reflecting back not just the actions of others, but also the hidden beliefs we carry about ourselves. It's tempting to look at the masks, the defensiveness, and the armor we wear as evidence of fatal flaws. But what if you could see them for what they truly are? Every persona, every carefully cultivated front and strategic withdrawal was originally a tool of survival. You donned these masks not out of weakness, but out of necessity. When emotions once felt overwhelming, when the threat of rejection loomed, you adapted. We all did. And these adaptations, though limiting, kept us safe. That is something to honor rather than despise. But now, those masks begin to suffocate more than they protect. The very armor that helped you survive now keeps you from what you want most. Genuine connection, inner peace, true acceptance. So what's the alternative? It is not, as you might suspect, to double down on controlling others' opinions or manipulating circumstances. Healing never arrives on the wings of external approval. Searching for wholeness outside yourself, blaming partners, friends, society, or even fate, will only deepen your sense of lack. The work that matters, the alchemy of real transformation, always begins with turning inward, with attending to the places inside that you have avoided or denied. A new kind of safety emerges, not from guaranteeing that everyone around you approves, but from recognizing and accepting yourself in all your messy complexity. What if, instead of striving to control how others see you, you could bring a gentle awareness to all of your parts, the wounded, the scared, the striving, the resentful? Consciousness trumps control every time, for only through honest, compassionate attention to yourself, without blame, without shame, can true healing take root and peace finally begin to flourish. But what's the real cost of a culture trained to flee from pain? Let's stay here a moment, just the two of us. Have you noticed how almost everywhere you look, there's an undercurrent telling us to move on, to smile through difficulty, to hustle past discomfort as though it's a sign of failure? It's not just the self-help industry or the glossy pages of magazines. It's in the way we talk amongst ourselves, how we smooth over our own aches with talk of keeping busy, of crushing our goals, of showing the world how very okay we are. But let's be honest, isn't there a peculiar exhaustion humming beneath all the busyness? Maybe it's the late-night scrolling, desperate for distraction, or the morning commute, heart clenched around memories or anxieties that never quite go quiet. Society hands us a script: suppress the ache, outpace your pain, bury what's bruised deep under layers of productivity and masked strength. So we trade vulnerability for efficiency, tenderness for toughness, and start wearing composure like a second skin. Yet what happens to all that gets hidden. That's where it gets interesting and dangerous. Picture it, a professional who never admits to fear, who, by all accounts, appears unshakable, until, one day, the strain of denial fractures their health, their relationships, even their very sense of self. We're told that feeling pain, especially emotional pain, is weakness. But isn't it repressed pain, the kind we deny so heroically that leaks out sideways? Those irritable explosions, mysterious illnesses, the gnawing discontent that refuses to make sense. All these are signals, not signs of failure, but tormented attempts to get our attention. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of us we refuse to acknowledge, banishing inconvenient feelings to some unseen basement of the psyche. Yet, as Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Have you ever glimpsed your own shadow, maybe in a sudden, uncharacteristic reaction, or in that unsettling sense that part of you is steering from the dark? Denied anger curdles into passive aggression. Ignored grief stifles our capacity to connect, to trust, to risk loving fully. And unacknowledged fear can cause us to sabotage the very opportunities we most desire. So why do we cling so tightly to this idea of strength as emotional stoicism? Maybe it feels safer to appear untouched, impervious, even to ourselves. Vulnerability stings. To sit in pain with no idea how long it might last or what it might demand feels terrifying. No wonder we seek escape in perfectionism, in the comfort of routines, the sweet high of achievement, or in the fierce autonomy of hyper-independence. But if we look closely, don't these evasions shape our very identities? It's as if, brick by brick, we construct a fortress against disappointment, not realizing the walls grow higher on all sides, keeping us from ourselves as well as from others. True strength, the kind rarely celebrated in headlines or hashtags, looks very different. It's the quiet courage to meet suffering head-on, to sit in the fire of our own discomfort without reaching for an immediate fix or explanation. Can you recall a time you've done this, felt, instead of fled? It's rarely dramatic. Sometimes it's as humble as breathing through heartbreak, letting yourself mourn what's lost, or being honest about the sharp edge of envy or regret instead of painting over it with gratitude. This kind of presence isn't passivity. It's the fierce work of staying alive to experience, of letting even pain become part of the story rather than an exile. What might it mean to greet our shadow, to integrate pain rather than fencing it off? Jung called this individuation, the alchemical, lifelong process of becoming whole by reconciling light and dark, joy and sorrow, acceptance and longing. It isn't comfortable. In fact, it sometimes feels like chaos, like undoing. But from that crucible, a deeper authenticity is possible. A self no longer shackled by the fear of discomfort, but open to the full range of being. Is this not the pivotal difference between performing peace and embodying it? Outward calm, when it's built on numbness, is brittle. Scratch its surface and the ache is still there, coiled tight, waiting to surge forth. But inward transformation, real integration, begins with allowing the mess, the heartbreak, the vastness of emotions that don't fit neatly into a social script. It starts to look less like fixing ourselves and more like attending, listening, and allowing what rises to rise. Suffering, then, is not just a test or a punishment. It becomes initiation, an invitation to witness who we are when all the masks and strategies have failed. Who is left when there's nothing to protect or hide? Perhaps then the chaos and discomfort we've been taught to dread are not signs that something's gone wrong. Maybe they are the necessary storms that clear the air, the creative ground from which something wholly new might emerge. What if the measure of a life well lived isn't how smoothly we skated over difficulty, but the depth of transformation we allowed as we moved through it? What would it mean to live knowing that wholeness is found not in perfection, but in the radical acceptance of our own humanity, messy, aching, and astonishingly alive? So let us draw the lens wider and look back at the ground we've walked. Did we not begin this exploration by asking why the same pains seem to find us over and over again? Why heartbreak, rejection, disappointment, all the recurring stings, arise no matter how adept we become at trying to anticipate or avoid or outsmart suffering? By now, perhaps you can sense that these patterns are not merely the result of a world outside us conspiring in mischief. No, they are signals, cries from something deeper, our own unhealed wounds, our own unattended corners. If you pause, truly pause, and reflect on the moments of deepest discomfort in your life, those moments when everything in you wanted to distract, to numb, to run, what was actually happening inside? Was the world attacking you? Or was it simply holding up a mirror, showing you the bruises you carry, the stories you have quietly lived by? This is the subtle but radical shift. Realizing that external events do not create our pain, they reveal it. The world troubles the surface, but the ripples come from below. To turn inward in these moments is not easy. I'll not pretend it is. For many, the more bearable option is to keep wearing masks, to skillfully navigate relationships and work with a practiced smile or controlled detachment. We become, as the world admires, high-functioning. We chase the security of being needed, of being praised, of being seen as competent or easy to love. Yet this chase, this endless audition for worthiness, is a refusal to hold our own gaze in the mirror. It is, in a way, to live as a ghost in your own life. As we have seen, healing is not an event, but a journey. A slow, compassionate descent into the shadowy self we've worked so hard to keep from view. What does it mean to integrate the shadow? It is to look unflinchingly at those parts you've denied, the anger that leaks out as sarcasm, the envy dressed as self-sacrifice, the fear of mediocrity masquerading as ambition. When you turn your conscious attention inward and allow yourself to feel what has always felt unbearable, you begin the painstaking work of gathering yourself back together, of becoming whole. But why is it so terrifying to let old patterns die? Why do we cling to them even when they cost us connection, peace, and vitality? Perhaps because at their root, these identities and behaviors have at one point protected us. It can feel like a kind of death when the old coping strategies no longer serve, but it is a death we must allow. Not the end of the self, but the end of all that is false and heavy and borrowed. This is where authenticity is born, in the willingness to grieve what must be left behind, even confusion, even old certainty, even the comfort of familiar pain. How does one survive such a collapse? With patience, with courage, and with the fierce, gentle practice of self-compassion. There will be grief, yes, how could there not be? When masks fall away, one feels exposed. When behaviors dissolve, one feels lost. Resistance, confusion, sometimes a longing to go back to how things were. These are normal responses to change. Accepting them is as much a part of healing as the more heroic inner work. Can you sit with what arises without immediately seeking to fix or distract? Can you allow yourself the freedom to not have all the answers, to be in process rather than performance? In time, something remarkable happens. The need for external validation, approval, applause, constant reassurance begins to fall away. Where before you looked outward for approval, now you find yourself quietly rooting more deeply in your own worth. You begin to see that real strength is not hard, brittle and unfeeling, but soft and willing to be seen as you are. Anger, longing, joy, fear, all welcome at the table. Here is the paradox. It is not perfection that brings wholeness, nor invulnerability that brings peace. Carl Jung, the philosopher of the soul's hidden architecture, spoke of individuation, the process by which we integrate our many selves, shadow and light, into a single, authentic life. To become whole is not to be flawless, but to be true, to make peace with contradiction, to live as one who no longer needs to outsource worth to the shifting winds of circumstance. So let this be a gentle invitation. Stop searching for the answer outside yourself. Stop waiting for the world to affirm what you have yet to affirm within. Healing, authenticity, belonging. They are not boons conferred by others, but gifts you give yourself when you finally decide to return home to what has always been yours. Whisper, if only to yourself, and perhaps only in the quietest moments, I am whole, I am here, I am enough. You belong to yourself, first and last. The world may not change. The pain of old wounds may still echo on occasion. But your sense of self-possession, that quiet certainty born of facing what you had once feared, will not be shaken by the chaos outside. In this, you become at once more real, more free, and more wholly alive. And perhaps, in that freedom, you will begin to find not just an end to suffering, but the deep, sustaining joy of being fully, unforgettably yourself.